You're good.
Hello, everyone. This is a public meeting of Randolph County Community Foundation Application Review Panel, convened to review and discuss the Indiana Arts Commission's fiscal year 24 Arts Project Support Grant Program applications for Region 5. I'm Carl Schaefer, located in Muncie, Indiana, and today's review panel facilitator. Today is Wednesday, April 26th, 2023, and we are meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. There is no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of applications or applicants before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting will be recorded and made available upon request. At this time, I will individually invite each of the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. Let's start with the panel. Denise?
Hi, I'm Denise King. I work with Heart of Indiana United Way. I'm Director of Campaign and Donor Relations, and I'm here in Muncie, Indiana.
Allison?
Hello, everyone. I'm Allison Bell, and I am in Muncie, Indiana.
Joe?
Hello, my name is Joe Atkinson. I'm an assistant professor of communication and director of creative technologies at the University of Evansville in Evansville, Indiana.
Courtney?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Young. I'm a writer and a creative entrepreneur, and I am from Southwest Louisiana.
Mel Joy?
Hi,
I hope I got that right. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced it.
You're good, Carl. Thank you. My name is Mel Joy Livermore. I am an interdisciplinary artist and researcher, and I spent a lot of time in Muncie, Indiana over the last few years, currently in Chicago.
I think I've got everybody. Did I miss anyone at all? Sounds like I did well. Now we'll begin the panel review, and this is how the process works.
Can we do staff introductions really quick?
Oh, yes, please,
Great.
staff. My apologies.
Since I'm already interrupting, I'll go. My name is Brady Eulis. I'm the regional arts partner for Region 5 through the Community Foundation of Randolph County, born and raised in Muncie and zooming in from Indianapolis today.
I've lost photographs of people on my screen, so I'm just going to allow the others to join in.
I'll go ahead and chime in. I'm Paige Sharp, a Deputy Director of Programs with the Indiana Arts Commission here in Indianapolis, and I'm just here to oversee the process and address any policy clarification if needed.
I am Eric Ashby. I'm the Grants and Research Manager for the Indiana Arts Commission, coming to you from Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm here working tech today.
Very good. I think I've got that squared away. Correct, Brady? Yes, I see the thumbs up. Now we'll begin the panel review, and this is how it works. I will announce the application that we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed in the virtual waiting room while the application is reviewed. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. These scores save automatically. Are there any questions? Let's begin. We will start with the application from A Town Center Incorporated. The first reader is Denise King.
Okay, thank you. I think the description of the project was very easy to visualize, and the goal was very well outlined. So it was really easy to understand. It was also really great to see a list of the artists that had already committed to being part of the project, and also how the application really provided information on what the stipend looked like specifically, and that materials were going to be provided to those artists participating. I really did appreciate being able to see a lot of examples of those artists and their work. I thought that was very well put together as a sample. The data on the communities being served was a really important addition. I felt like research was really done. The application didn't appear to address maybe how impact was going to be measured during and after the project. So it would maybe be nice to see a little bit more clarity on that. And that concludes my comments.
I'm Allison
Thank
Bell.
you.
I'm offering second comments. Excuse me, Carl, was I supposed to wait for you?
Yeah, I was slow to get my mute button off. So anyway, yes, the second reader is Allison Bell.
Thank you, Carl. I agree with everything that Denise said. I would just add that this is a wonderful economic development opportunity, I believe, that gets people out of their houses after COVID, when people are still kind of hesitant to do so.
Well, thank you, Allison. Are there any new or additional or opposing comments?
Hi, Carl. This is Courtney Young. I have a few additional comments to make. Again, I really thought that they had an MOU in place, which I thought was really great, really smart, between 3 additional groups, which I liked. I would have liked to see broadly what the parameters of this agreement were and who is responsible for what. I do really love the engagement with public space and a perceived unsafeness being made safe and creating safe, beautiful spaces. I also did like the two-way relationship between the artist and the community, that anytime anyone moves between these spaces, they see wonderful artwork. I was really interested in IDEA when it comes to the artist. I understand that initially the artists will be picked based on their network, but I'm really interested in seeing how they can find other artists in the community who may be a good fit for this, but may not be a part of their direct network. And I think that's all of my additional comments.
Are there any others? Okay, thank you. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. And let me know if you need more time, or I'll take nods if you're ready to go. Proceed. Okay, sounds like things are going along nicely. The next application is from Arts in Union City Alliance. And the first reader for that is Joe Atkinson.
Thank you. I wanted to start by noting that this, right off the bat, I think the applicant illustrated a very clear goal that they wanted to create a strategic plan to best focus their efforts to promote the arts community. However, I found it hard to sort of gauge the artistic value of this because by nature of what it is that they're doing. We're not entirely sure what that strategic plan looks like, and exactly how artists will benefit from it in the future. They did indicate that 10 artists will benefit from the process, though I wasn't, though not through this budget process. I wasn't entirely clear as to how that would happen, and would have liked to have known, kind of seen that line drawn a little bit more clearly between those things. I thought they did a terrific job of talking about how they were going to identify with different areas of the community and underserved areas of the community in working to put together that strategic plan, and everything in terms of the staffing all seemed to make sense. The only question that I had otherwise was about the budget. The budget says that this $5,000 will be used for consulting fees, including development of the written strategic plan, interviews, charrette surveys. I would have liked a little bit more detail in terms of how that money was going to be spent, what it was going to go toward. I guess just a little bit more directly, because it felt a bit vague to me. And that ends my comments.
Thank you, Joe. The second reader for this one is Courtney Young.
Thank you so much, Carl. I agree with a lot of what Joe said. What I really liked about this proposal is sort of an acknowledgement of the function of arts as important, even though, as it states, it's a rural agricultural community with an eye on pragmatism. I also really liked the definition of their audience. Quote, they define audience beyond census data, which I really liked. I did have a question, like Joe, about the budget. The income that they may receive from this grant is a majority of the income they're expecting. So I wondered, if they didn't get the grant, how would they proceed? How would they think about a plan to get the grant to continue with the strategic plan? I also wanted to know a bit about the process for picking the consultant, if the consultant had already been chosen, if not, what that process would look like, and also who is in charge of sort of working with and managing the consultant when that person came on. So I was looking for that. Let's see. Yeah, and I think that would conclude my comments.
Thank you, Courtney. Are there any new or additional or opposing comments? Okay, please finalize your.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was thinking a little bit before I spoke up, but I think for me, I really value, even though it's like still ambiguous, like it's in the process of trying to figure out what the impact on the arts could be. I think that there's something really valuable about carving out time and resources for doing that, because it can have greater impact in the long run. So that was kind of my one thought, where I think strategic plan would still have like artistic impact in that way.
Is there anything else?
I'd like to just add that this is a very rural community and unique, and I think it would be a positive thing to be able to help invest in the arts there.
Is there anything else? Okay. Please finalize your scores then and update your online comments. And when I see nods of approval, I will move on. Okay, very good. The next application for consideration is Ball State University Foundation for the Ball State Public Media. And the first reader for this application is Mel Joy Livermore.
Thank you, Carl. I wanted to say that I believe that the Ball State Public Media did a lot of great work in talking with their listeners and their viewers, and understanding the needs and desires of the community to have more access to the cultural events and spaces and people that are making things happen in the communities. And I think that does a great job thinking about, like, broadcasting has the ability to reach a very large number of people. So I think that's something that's really positive about this space. I am also kind of asking the question, what types of conversations are being had with the artists that are actually going to be involved in this process? What would actually be beneficial to those artists? Are they looking for just publicity, or are there other ways that we can kind of, or the organization can think about, like presenting programming or like workshop vignettes to showcase artists that are teaching artists or things like that. And I think that would really help with the question of what kind of support are the artists getting for their time, since there's no financial compensation for the artists in the budget. What are other creative ways that the organization can provide support for the artists that are being a part of this collaboration? Is there a long-term relationship? Those sorts of questions are things that I'm asking a lot about. But I think since they have provided other examples of different programming that they've done before, I was thinking, for example, the bookstore that is referenced in the travel documentary, was there an increase in visits to that store based on being highlighted in the show? Like those sorts of things. How can that information impact the current project? So yeah, I think those are my main comments.
Thank you, Mel Joy. The second reader is Denise King.
Thank you. One thing that really stood out to me about this application, as far as accessibility, was talking about the barriers a lot of folks in our communities have with internet connectivity, and how this program is still accessible to folks that don't have reliable or any internet service. So I think that's really great. I'm so glad that that was part of the application. I also appreciated seeing that there would be continual surveys done, and especially that there would be an online feature for artists to submit for this program, so that it is a bit more accessible to artists that may not be on the radar of the organizations that were listed as examples in the application. Also, it's fairly clear that project management is solid, having professionals doing the producing of the show. So it sounds like there would be the high quality you expect. And I think that's it for me.
Very good. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Are there any additional opposing comments here? Courtney?
Hi, thank you, Carl. I just wanted to say that I thought the potential reach of this project was really impressive, and the potential exposure that new and sort of emerging and also established artists could have. It was interesting, in the proposal, they said it started because of community interest. So I was interested if there were plans to fundraise from the community for this project. I was also interested in how the surveys were administered and sort of what sort of questions they were asking and who was in charge of that. And finally, I was interested in sort of accessibility around sort of visual and people with visual and auditory impairments. Sort of what does IDEA look like for this organization around that? Thank you.
Are there any more comments? Okay, so while you're finalizing your scores and updating your online comments, Brady has a reminder for us.
Yeah, I don't think we touched on this, and I don't think it was anywhere in anything that's been shared with you beforehand, but just if you can, for first readers and second readers, as you're sharing your comments, if you could also call out which section of the application those comments are related to, it really helps applicants kind of track that feedback as it relates to the information they provided. So everybody's doing a great job. Just like one extra little detail, if you could add that in, I think it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, things are going along very nicely. I'm going to do at least one more, and then I'm going to ask you if anybody needs a break. So the next application we're going to consider is Central Indiana Powwow Incorporated. And the first reader for that is Allison Bell.
Thank you. I felt this was a very positive, coordinated plan. It had a lot of partners that would have an impact on a large groups of people throughout the community. It certainly emphasizes the idea, concepts, and reinforces those which are vital. It engages visitors through art and dancing. And to me, dancing's where it's at. So I thought that was great. It could have used a little bit more background on how they have directly assisted or supported members of Native American communities. They make a brief mention in it. It's somewhere in this last long question, and I'm sorry I can't be more specific, but I like that, and I would like to learn more about how it supports other, perhaps other multicultural groups. They do have Hispanic and African American communities involved under number 3 on the community engagement and idea narrative. Excuse me. They have a great survey plan. I like that. And good partnerships. The 2-day artist in residence program sounds very fascinating. And they do give 45 artists stipends and have a very, very experienced manager on this. So the project timeline and the budget all seem very much in line.
Thank you, Allison. The second reader is Joe.
I'll echo Allison that I think that this was a very well thought out, very well laid out. I think I actually wrote on at some point that it was, if anything, almost too detailed. I got a lot of detail, and I really understood what it was that they wanted to do, which I thought was fantastic. I was impressed. Not only did they talk about their survey and feedback cycle, but also gave us actual examples of improvements made for this year's festivals based on that feedback. So not only illustrating that they were taking feedback and taking it seriously, but that they had been and were making changes based on that in the up in this artistic quality section. I thought that was great. Again, thought it was terrific that they were able to directly benefit so many artists through this. Their community engagement and IDEA sections, I thought, again, they did a great job of illustrating how they're working with the community, what some of their strategies are, and the project management section. Everybody seems more than qualified to do what they're doing, and the budget seemed in line. So yeah, that's the end of my comments. I don't have much to add.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any additional comments or opposing comments? Courtney?
I just have really quick comment. I really like that they're using software to track numbers and get data. So that seemed sort of really sound to me.
Denise, did you have a comment?
Yes, very brief. I was pleased to see that there were very specific steps in addressing ADA compliance outlined there.
Very good. Is there anything else? Okay, please finalize the scores then and update the comments. And I'm going to ask if anybody wants to take a short break at this point, or shall we press on? Seems like we're pressing on, yes? Very good. The next application is from Duck Creek Center for the Arts. And the first reader is Courtney Young.
Sure. Thank you so much, Carl. I'd like to start with the artistic sort of quality component of this application. I thought it was very sound. I thought the goals were super clear. I really like the 3-prong approach of looking at The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from a literary perspective, from a theatrical perspective, and an aesthetic or fine arts perspective. I also loved that it was youth-led and there were numerous ways for youth to get involved. I thought the quality was really good from the Pride and Prejudice video that was a part of the application. When it comes to, let's see, community engagement, one thing I did have a question about was sort of they talk a bit about impact and evaluation. So they'll survey students before and after, but I was really interested in sort of how they engage with the audience. They talk a lot about how the students will benefit, but I also think the audience will benefit as well. I also wanted to see a bit more DEIA discussion when it came to the audience. What are the accessibility measures that are in place to ensure that everyone who comes will be able to enjoy the show? Sort of what are the demographics of this community outside of it being culturally underserved? And how does that inform how they will approach this production? I did see that the APS grant will approximately be half of the anticipated income. So I wanted to know if there is a plan in place if they didn't get the grant or if they got less than what they expected. How will they make up for that? I thought the timeline and the marketing was really solid, and I have no doubt that this group of people will be able to get this done in a really awesome way. The expertise of the staffing is really top-notch, so that was great to see. I think the last thing I'll say before I pass it on to the second reader is that mentorship is mentioned, but I wanted a bit more clarity into how that relationship was structured. Is it informal? Is it formal? Who is sort of overseeing that relationship? And I think that is it for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. The second reader is Mel.
Hey, Courtney, thank you. Yeah, Courtney, I agree with a lot of your thoughts and comments, so I won't reiterate. But I also was thinking a lot about the artistic or the visual art component, and thinking about what are ways to incorporate visual artists from the local community, perhaps as those connections to the themes of the novel. And so that was something to bring it more into the community instead of thinking art historically, perhaps. That's one question that I thought about. And then I think that, yeah, that's pretty much all all that Courtney didn't say. So thanks.
Thanks, Mel. Are there any additional or opposing comments? Okay. Please finalize the scores and update your comments.
Denise has her hand raised.
Oh, she has her hand raised. I'm sorry.
Yes, I am sorry. Real quickly, one thing that I noticed is that, or I may have missed, I did not see where community input, and I've got to go back to the section, I apologize. Just in the IDEA, like, was the community helping inform this project? I just didn't see that in there. So it might be nice to see a little bit more about that. Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, Denise.
No worries.
Joe, you have something then?
I was going to say, actually, I had been thinking about saying the same thing, so I did want to echo Denise and just to say, I don't think you missed it. I didn't see it there either. And didn't see a lot of IDEA strategies or actually, I think that's what I said. I didn't see a lot of IDEA strategies, and I was curious if there were plans for, direct outreach to underserved communities that I feel like they had taken the barriers down, but not necessarily were doing any specific outreach to try and draw in some of those other underserved communities, and wanted to know if those things were in place or plans were in place, and if not, could they be?
Very good. Is there anything else? Okay, then. Please finalize the scores and your online comments, and we will proceed then to the next application, which is from East Central Neighborhood Association. And the first reader is Denise.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in really quick because we do
Yeah.
have a conflict here.
Oh, yeah.
Eric, if you could. Eric did. Great.
Thanks for catching that before I started talking. Starting with artistic quality, with a festival like this, there's a lot of components. I like that they really outline the wide range of the types of artists that are performing and are involved with the project. There was a mention of surveys again here that are sent out to the community ahead of time to get input before the festival. That is great. It would just be helpful to know how that's getting out to communities. As far as artistic support, I really love that the artists are being paid their wages. So it sounded from the application that the stipends are determined by what the artist's going rate, so to speak, is. And that there were a large number of Indiana artists outlined in the application. Let's see. I'd also like to know, as far as in the community engagement section, how that call out meeting for festival planning is announced to the community. Just a little bit more being descriptive there. As far as project management, I thought the budget, the timeline, all that was very well outlined and detailed. Thank you.
Okay, very good. The second reader is Joe.
Thank you. First, under the artistic quality section, while it's not necessarily entirely part of what this grant is funding, I was curious. They talk a lot about the performers and the artists and how they're going to be worked into this festival and how they're going to be paid, which I thought was, to echo what she said, terrific. I was curious about the main focus of the festival, which is the exposure to the architecture throughout the neighborhood. They talked about that, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about how the event would incorporate that, which I think is also a valuable artistic experience alongside the work of the artists. And in the community engagement and IDEA section, I did have questions. I wanted a little bit more discussion about how underserved communities are actively invited into the event, other than it just being held in some neighborhoods that where underserved populations live. Is outreach performed toward a diverse population of potential attendees? If so, what does that look like? I wanted to see a little bit more clarity in that area of the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Are there any additional or opposing comments? Hi, Courtney.
Hi, thank you, Carl. I echo a lot of what my co-panelists have said. I also think the IDEA plans around accessibility were really, really in depth in this application. They had accessibility in the form of wheelchairs and well-maintained streets. Also, they had shuttles to help people in terms of transportation. So I thought that was great. I also really like that the board is made up of people who have served for years, sort of in this capacity. So you have a sense that past experience is influencing a lot of the present, which is something that I really liked about this proposal.
Very good. Is there anything else, Mel?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what everyone has said up until this point. The one thing that I was curious to learn more about is they reference about 8,000 to 10,000 people coming through the event, but there isn't a lot of like clarity around how they're gathering that information necessarily, and like how like we talked about surveys, and I think that'll be really good to try and like gather information, but just would like to know a little bit more about how those things are tracked, and what having that information and knowledge will do to impact the event planning process.
Very good. Is there anything else? Okay, while you're updating your score and comments. We'll have everyone rejoin us again and move on. Okay, I think everyone is with us again. Is that correct? Yes. The next application is Hagerstown Nettle Creek Players Incorporated, and the first reader is Mel.
All right. I liked the idea that there are levels of accessibility to this event in the sense that people can participate as viewers of the performances, people can participate as performers, people can participate in workshops and those sorts of things. So the idea of trying to create multiple access points is something that I think is strong about the application. And I am taking that from the artistic quality section. I think that, yeah, there's a good attention to past experience as an influence to how they're moving forward and planning ahead. Artistic support, I like the way that they are trying to connect local performers with folks that have expertise in their fields. So bringing people in from outside of the community to kind of give strength to the community of performers that are happening in that space. Yes, and then in community engagement and IDEA, I think that it's great that there are new connections being formed with schools, especially in the looking for the large cast of younger students for the Oliver play. And I think I would like to see more attention to other layers of impact that make accessibility to the arts difficult in that space, aside from just lack of programming. So what other intersections are coming into play? Is there good ways to connect with the community to learn those things and actually have those conversations? And then overall, I feel like the project management is strong. There's a long history of running the program and it seems like pretty good overall. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Mel. The second reader for that is Allison.
I agree with everything you said, Mel, and I did appreciate the way that they got feedback from their audiences. They did a questionnaire and did staff observations. So it gives you sort of quantitative and qualitative feedback. So I thought that was very thorough. That's my comment.
Thank you, Allison. Are there any additional or opposing comments? Denise?
Something that stood out to me in the timeline of the project. So they had included a board evaluation in the timeline. It's nice to see that evaluations or surveys or collecting feedback. It's great that that is being scheduled into that timeline. I think that was really a standout.
Very good. Is there are there any other comments? Okay, then you'll please update your scores and comments. And we will proceed then to the next one, which is Indiana Motorcycle Preservation Society. And the first reader for that is Courtney Young.
Thank you so much, Carl. So with this application, I thought the goals were very clear. And I really like the idea of an event connecting motorcycle enthusiasts and people who are just interested in this culture, sort of with this history. So I thought there was a real rich subculture here. I think they did have some sense of the demographics of the area, particularly when it came to the population and income. So in terms of the artistic quality, I did think that that was there. A couple of things I was interested in. They made a mention that one year they were rained out. So I was interested if there was a plan in place to ensure that in the event that something like this happens, they would be prepared to deal with it. I was also interested in the fact for the budget, there's just one line item, and that is to sort of pay for the artist. But I was interested if they anticipated any other sort of budget line items. Like, for example, they said that a copy of this will be provided to everyone who's in attendance. So were there any expenses associated with doing that? And also, were there any other avenues that they were sort of applying for income or sort of fundraising? Or is this sort of the only sort of grant that they were looking for for this particular part of the event? And I think the last thing I'll say is I really did like that they had a ton of different ways for people to engage in this event and for people to participate. So there was no to low cost. It was live streamed. So there are plenty of avenues for people to be engaged in this event. And I think that is the end of my comments.
Very good, Courtney. The second reader is Mel.
Oh, great. I'm glad that my computer came back to me. It was having a moment. I agree with a lot of what Courtney was talking about again. And I think that, sorry, I'm a little frazzled based on the computer moment, but no, it's okay. But the, let's see. So I would be really interested in thinking about more artistic ways for the community to engage with like the event itself, beyond just the showing of a video. And so are there other kind of moments or points of like other artists in the community that can be involved in this process? And I think that, yeah, I think that hits most of my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mel. Are there any additional comments? Joe?
I first of all felt the application was really for the video, and there was a whole lot of more detail on the festival and the event and all of the other things around it, which were important for us to know about, but also not the focus of what they were asking for funding for. I also, I echo the question about, if you're going to be handing out DVDs, if you're going to be giving this material out, where is that funding coming from? But I also wondered about, first of all, other ways that people could engage with this. Showing the video and handing out to people who come to the event strike me as things that hit really well for that population that's already here. But what engagement is there to go outside and to show it elsewhere and try and interest people who aren't already at the event in this event? So that struck me. And then the last thing, I thought under the IDEA and the community engagement, the applicant didn't particularly discuss how it would serve underserved populations, other than noting again the population of that specific area. And while they have noted they've discussed the motorcycle tradition with people in the community, the application doesn't really note any particular collaborative or input process involving the community in this particular piece of the project, or any IDEA strategies. So I wonder if any of those things exist, if any of those things are part of the plan.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else? Denise?
I just wanted to touch on what Joe was saying about the engagement piece with the film being shown live and giving out those videos. I did want to clarify, it did mention that they would broadcast it on social media and that it would be on YouTube. Just FYI, I think because that stood out to me, I thought that was great, and they'll have it on their website too. So there's a little bit more of that accessibility there.
Allison, I think you had your hand up too.
Yes, just real quick, I was kind of disappointed about there was no listing of any kind of cultural groups that were in the population in this area and how outreach was going to be done with people from different minority cultural backgrounds. And I was disappointed also that there wasn't a mention of motorcycle art. I think there could have been a lot of jumping off points that would make this event relevant, very relevant to art. And I had a hard time making those connections without them, such as painting the motorcycles. There's a lot of interesting artistic value, I think, in how motorcycles are decorated and made. Any kind of artwork that contains that, you know, paintings or whatever, I thought would have been interesting. So I would just be interested in more background, because this is not an area I would be familiar with, and I would find it more interesting to have more detail.
Is there anything else to add here? Mel.
Circling back to one of my thoughts, sorry, that I forgot earlier. I think the idea that the community was only really mentioned in kind of like, hey, remember this story happened, but not a lot of like involvement in that planning process. So I think that would also be something I'd like to see more of for this project.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. While you're finalizing your scores, we will then proceed to the National Center for Great Lakes Native American Culture. And when you're ready, Allison, you're the first reader.
Okay. This was, I thought, a fascinating project, and I especially liked that they were taking the art out into not just the community, but the whole state. The honorary was going to be a stipend for the artists, as well as covering travel costs. And that alleviates the barrier of travel, which is such a concern for many people who can't access art work. I like the artist in residence programs and the collaborations with the local groups, 4-H camps, scouts, museums, and the information that they could share about the history of the native tribes there and the importance of their culture and history. I think that there were really many outreach opportunities, and the art samples were gorgeous. I really appreciated being able to see those, the samples of the beadwork, and I've never heard of brain tanned leather, but that sounds interesting. Just a lot of variety that I thought would be appealing to everyone. They had a good collaboration with other arts groups, the council, the timeline. It was very realistic and detailed. And they did some outreach to Black churches and were concerned about being ADA compliant. So I felt those were all very positive.
Very good, Allison. The second reader is Denise.
Thank you. I agree with everything Allison was saying. So I just have a couple of things to add. Again, I always like seeing specific artists identified and providing a little bit of information about who they are, especially in this kind of application, just knowing their connection to Native American culture, or, you know, their specialization. And then of course, really going into describing what those stipends look like. And secondly, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you what section that was from. I've got to retrain my brain. In community engagement, I also really like that there's a 1-year calendar for that, and that there was an evaluation report as part of that, so that they can year to year make informed decisions about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Is there any additional comments? Courtney?
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, so in terms of sort of artistic quality, I love that this was an intergenerational project and that it was a multicultural project. So I think there was a line in the proposal that said you could see a 7-year-old sitting next to sort of like a 77-year-old or something like that. And I thought that that was really great and cool. I also, in terms of staffing, I thought the board chair, Linda, has incredible sort of experience, a really deep experience. But she's the only sort of staff person named. So I wondered if there were other staff members who had her level of experience, or if this project was really leaning more heavily on her expertise. In terms of sort of impact and measurement in DEIA, I loved how they talked specifically about the populations they were really interested in inviting. So senior citizens in assisted living, rural populations, also the differently abled. So I really liked having a specific idea of sort of what DEIA sort of looks like for this particular organization. I did want to know a bit more about how they would specifically sort of accommodate those populations, and also what the sort of surveying process specifically looks like. It was named that they are sort of surveying and sort of soliciting feedback from those populations, but I'd love to know sort of who is in charge of that and sort of how that's sort of handled. In the budget, I just have one question around the income section. When they stated scholarships and publicity marketing as income, I just wanted to know specifically what that meant. What does sort of publicity and marketing around income sort of mean, and where is that coming from? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Is there anything else? Any other comments? Okay, very good. Please update your scores and your online comments, and then we will proceed to the Read Center. And Joe, you're the first reader whenever you're ready.
Is everyone else good? All right, thank you. Well, first of all, under the for artistic quality, I thought the applicant offered a thorough explanation of the project, of the types of artists who will be involved and who has been involved up until now, the reasons for the event, the feedback that'll help to continue to build the event into its second year, the combination of the variety of artists and the number of events and the venue combined for what sounds like an ideal high quality event. And thought it was great that they are requesting to pay 12 artists, an increase from 2 this year, to build the event and to better support artists. They're very clear about the ways this is going to directly financially benefit these 12 local artists. In the community engagement and IDEA section, again, I thought the applicant's answers to all of the sections were very thorough. I particularly appreciated their candor about the events being largely internally planned up until this point because it was a new event, but now they're looking to be more actively involved with the community and to bring the community involved more. And they talked not just about wanting to do that, but they listed some concrete steps they were taking to do so, which I thought was great and lent credibility to that plan. So from their explanation of the underserved communities in the area to the discussion of community involvement, commitment to diversity among artists, and their detailed discussion of both quantitative and qualitative methods of collecting feedback, I thought their explanations were thorough and targeted to the questions asked as part of the grant process. As far as project management goes, I thought the personnel had impressive resumes, especially for a volunteer organization. Everybody appeared more than capable of carrying off the events. The timeline seems realistic, though I did have questions and would have liked to have seen a little more detail in the planning process. I think the kind of once things get rolling, they've got a pretty detailed calendar, but I'd like to see a little bit more about the planning process, and the budget lined up and seemed appropriate for what they do or what they hope to do. Thank you. You're very much muted, Carl.
Pardon me. Thank you, Joe. And the second reader is Courtney.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carl. I agree with pretty much everything Joe said. I thought that this was a really robust proposal, a very ambitious plan. I thought it was thoughtful and really intentional. In terms of artistic quality, I thought the goals were very clear, and having been 1 year in existence, they've done a lot for a completely volunteer organization. I loved that the programs took place in 3 categories, and they took place at different times to attract different audiences. I thought that they were extremely open and responsive to feedback from the audience. And I really like that they have an artistic advisory committee with people specifically in place to really gather that sort of data and sort of make improvements. I also like the diversity around the musicians. There was diversity with age, diversity with race and ethnic makeup, and also diversity in the types of music. So I really like that. I also thought the audience was really diverse. So they come from different economic and racial backgrounds, differently abled, different ages, and also they cater to families as well. Finally, in terms of sort of input and impact, I really like how they did it in sort of different ways. So they use QR codes, they use paper surveys, they also have targeted discussions, which I thought was really great. And I think finally what I'll say is that I love their engagement with place and location, and their engagement specifically with transportation equity and sort of place equity and economic sort of factors. The only thing I'll add is that they have sort of a lot of collaborations with a lot of different types of people. So I was wondering sort of how those partnerships are structured, and sort of who's responsible for what and how often they meet, and sort of how sort of suggestions and sort of impact is measured around that. I also thought a bit about sustainability and sort of staffing. So this is an ambitious project, completely volunteer led. So I was interested in sort of how they were thinking about sustaining this in the long term. And yeah, I think that is it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Are there any additional or opposing comments? Denise?
Yes, real quickly, I just wanted to touch on the outreach and community engagement a little more. I thought it was very encompassing, and it stood out that they mentioned some groups that you don't often see specifically mentioned, and that's neighborhood associations and libraries. I thought that was a great way to connect with folks because libraries are very much a hub. Again, internet connectivity, just places where people seek information. So I loved seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Is there any other comments? Okay, very good. So while you're finalizing your scores and comments, I have the privilege of saying that this concludes the Indiana Arts Commission Region 5 Fiscal Year 24 Arts Project Support Panel number 1. Applicants will be notified of the status of their grant following the June commission meeting. If you have any questions, please contact Grady Eulis.